My name is Daniel. I'm 19 years old, and this trip was supposed to be nothing more than a peaceful retreat in the countryside. A break from the noise of the city, from college, from everything that constantly felt overwhelming. My mother thought it would be good for me to spend some time at the old family estate where my uncle and aunt lived. When the bus dropped me off at the edge of the village, I was struck by how silent it was. The air was heavy with the scent of grass and damp wood, but there was something else underneath it, something faint but sour, like mold that had been festering for too long. I walked down a narrow dirt path, dragging my suitcase behind me until the house appeared from behind the trees. The old manor stood alone, as if the forest itself had grown around it and pushed every other sign of life away. The wooden walls were weathered, the paint peeling, the windows framed with curtains that looked too heavy for such a fragile house. My uncle and aunt greeted me with polite smiles, though even in that moment I thought something about them felt rehearsed. My aunt embraced me stiffly, her arms cold against my back, and my uncle simply nodded, his gaze lingering on me too long. Inside, the air was thick with dust. The house smelled of locked rooms and forgotten corners. The furniture was old, some pieces clearly antiques, others patched together with nails and mismatched boards. Family photographs lined the walls, sepia faces of people I didn't know, their eyes following me as I walked by. I told myself it was only my imagination, that I wasn't used to houses like this. The first night, I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, a creak from the hallway woke me again. At first, I thought it was just the old wood shifting, but soon the noises were too deliberate, slow footsteps moving up and down the corridor, stopping outside my door. I lay frozen in bed, my heart pounding, and when I finally gathered enough courage to open the door, the hallway was empty. In the morning, I noticed something strange. The armchair in the living room had been moved. The rug was pushed aside, as though someone had dragged the furniture during the night. When I asked my aunt about it, she laughed in a way that didn't sound like laughter at all. "You'll get used to our rhythm of life here," she said, but her eyes were blank, hollow, as if she had rehearsed the line long before I ever arrived. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that the isolation was simply getting to me. But in my gut, I knew the house wasn't just old. It was alive with something that didn't want me there. The second night was worse. I kept hearing the floorboards groaning under invisible weight, as if someone was pacing outside my room again. This time, I decided to prepare. Earlier that evening, I had set up my camera, a small one I usually use for filming vlogs. I positioned it so it could see the hallway through the gap under my door. When morning came, I checked the footage. What I saw made my skin crawl. At exactly 2:37 a.m., the shadow of my uncle appeared. He stood right outside my door for nearly 5 minutes, completely motionless, his breathing faint but audible. He didn't knock, didn't speak, didn't move. He just stood there. Then he turned and walked back down the hall, disappearing into the dark. That alone was unsettling enough, but the camera had picked up more. Around 3 a.m., faint whispers came from the kitchen. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice was definitely my aunt's. She wasn't speaking to anyone else. She was murmuring to herself, repeating something over and over like a prayer. I didn't know what to do. At breakfast, I tried to mention it casually. "You both move around a lot at night, huh?" I asked, forcing a laugh. My uncle looked up from his plate, his eyes sharp and unblinking. My aunt smiled, too wide, too practiced. "You'll get used to it," she said again. The same words, exactly the same tone. That phrase followed me the whole day. Later, while exploring the house, I found the basement door slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at me, and I pulled it open. The air that rushed out was damp, carrying the smell of mildew and something metallic, iron or maybe blood. The steps creaked beneath my weight as I descended. At the bottom, I discovered a room I hadn't expected to find. The walls were lined with old, yellowed papers, each pinned like artwork. But they weren't papers, they were drawings. Children's drawings. Messy crayon sketches of stick figures, animals, houses. My stomach dropped when I saw one of them. It was me, a crude portrait of a boy with short hair, blue eyes, and a red shirt. 10 years younger, but unmistakably me. And the date at the bottom corner, written in shaky handwriting, was from more than a decade ago. I froze, unable to breathe. I had never been here before. There was no way they could have known me then. Just as I was about to back away, I heard footsteps above, slow, deliberate, directly above the basement. My uncle's voice floated down, low and calm. "Don't go too deep, Daniel. The house remembers." I barely slept after discovering the drawings in the basement. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that childlike sketch of myself staring back. By morning, I felt sick with dread, but I forced myself to act normal. Pretend. That was the only way to survive here. At breakfast, my aunt served me porridge. She stirred her spoon slowly, watching me with a faint smile that never touched her eyes. My uncle barely spoke. The silence stretched, broken only by the scrape of metal against ceramic. Later that night, I was woken by muffled voices. At first, I thought it was just another of my aunt's whispered monologues. But no, this time it was both of them. I crept out of bed, tiptoed down the hall, and stopped by the kitchen door. Their words froze my blood. "He doesn't suspect yet," my aunt whispered. "We can't rush this. It has to happen like last time. Last time we failed, my uncle hissed back. This time, everything must succeed. He has to stay. He has to understand before it's too late." I leaned closer, my heart hammering. The floorboard beneath my foot groaned. Silence fell inside the kitchen. For a moment, I thought they'd heard me. But then my aunt spoke again, softly. "The house wants him. It's always wanted him. We're only helping it." I clamped a hand over my mouth, stumbling backward. My head spun. What did she mean? What house? And why me? I rushed back to my room and locked the door, my breathing ragged. For the first time since I arrived, I wanted to scream. I thought about calling my mother, begging her to send someone for me. But my phone still had no signal, no matter where I stood. Hours later, just as I was drifting into uneasy sleep, a knock rattled my door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. "Daniel," my uncle's voice called. Calm. Too calm. "Are you awake?" I didn't answer. I held my breath until I heard him walk away. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be the last time he came. The next morning, I tried to act as if nothing had happened, but every nerve in my body was on edge. My uncle and aunt moved through the house like shadows, their routines strangely synchronized. They never argued in front of me, never showed any true emotion. But I had heard enough the night before to know something was hidden beneath their calm exterior. I decided to explore the house during the day, when they were less likely to notice. I wandered from room to room, opening doors that groaned on rusted hinges. Most of the bedrooms were empty, dusty, abandoned long ago. The wallpaper peeled in strips, and cobwebs filled the corners. Yet despite the decay, the air always smelled faintly sweet, as if someone had tried to mask the stench of rot with cheap perfume. At the end of the upstairs hallway, I found a locked door. The wood was darker than the others, heavy, with an old-fashioned brass handle. I pulled, pushed, even tried to force it open, but it wouldn't budge. As I leaned closer, I thought I heard something from the other side. A faint scratching sound, like nails dragging slowly across the wall. I pressed my ear against the door. A whisper. My own name. "Daniel." I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The voice had been soft, childlike, but impossibly clear. I didn't have time to react further, because my aunt's voice called from downstairs. "Daniel, lunch is ready." Her tone was cheerful, almost too cheerful, as if she had been watching me the whole time. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the locked room. I replayed the whisper in my head, convincing myself it had only been my imagination. But then I remembered the drawings in the basement. The portraits. My name in a stranger's handwriting. Later, when the house had fallen into silence, I heard it again. From upstairs. Through the locked door. "Daniel, come play." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the voice behind the locked door calling to me again. It wasn't just words. It was pulling me, tempting me like something alive. By morning, my nerves were frayed. I stumbled downstairs for breakfast, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes. My aunt was already at the table, humming tunelessly while stirring a pot of something too thick to be soup. My uncle sat stiffly in his chair, his gaze fixed on me as though he was studying every movement I made. "You should look around the orchard today," my aunt suggested with that strange smile. Fresh air will clear your head. The way she said it didn't sound like a suggestion. It sounded like an order. I went outside to escape their stares. The orchard stretched behind the house, rows of crooked apple trees heavy with fruit. The air was damp and still, not a single bird in sight. As I walked between the trees, I thought I heard the faint sound of breathing, steady, deliberate, not my own. When I turned, no one was there. Then I noticed the ground. Between the roots of one tree was a patch of disturbed soil, darker than the rest, as if something had been buried there recently. My chest tightened. I reached down to brush away the loose dirt, but before I could, I heard my uncle's voice from the porch. "Daniel," he called. "Stay close to the house. The woods can be dangerous." I looked up. He was standing with his arms crossed, watching me too closely. I forced a nod and stepped back from the soil, but my mind wouldn't let it go. That night, the house felt different, heavier. The air in my room pressed against my chest, thick and damp. As I lay in bed, I realized something terrifying. The creaks in the floorboards weren't random. They were rhythmic, a steady inhale and exhale. The house wasn't just old. It was breathing, and with every breath, I could hear it whisper my name. Daniel. By the sixth day, I was unraveling. Every corner of the house felt like it was watching me, every shadow holding something just beyond my sight. My uncle and aunt went about their routines in eerie silence, as though nothing was wrong, as though the house wasn't alive around us. That afternoon, while searching for any clue about what was happening, I stumbled into the study. It was a small, dim room with shelves sagging under the weight of books. Most were thick, leather-bound volumes with titles and languages I couldn't understand. But one object stood out on the desk, a thin notebook, its cover cracked with age. I opened it. Inside were handwritten entries dated decades ago. The handwriting was uneven, frantic at times, as if the writer had been in a hurry or terrified. The first entry spoke of moving into the house, of how beautiful and peaceful it seemed. But then the tone shifted. Mentions of the whispers, of the children calling from walls. One line chilled me to the core. The house chooses. It always chooses. Once it calls a name, there is no escape. My hands trembled as I flipped further. The later pages described rituals, offerings buried beneath the orchard, drawings pinned to the basement walls, and nights spent sitting outside children's doors to listen so the house knows they belong. And then, on the very last page, scrawled in large, desperate letters, "It wants Daniel." My stomach dropped. The date beneath the entry was from 12 years ago, long before I ever arrived. I slammed the book shut, my pulse racing. That was impossible. How could my name have been written here, years before I even knew this place existed? Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. My aunt stood in the doorway. Her empty smile stretched across her pale face. "You found the diary," she said softly, as though it didn't matter at all. Then her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Good. The house likes when you read its story." After finding the diary, I couldn't breathe in that study any longer. I shoved the notebook back where I'd found it and rushed to my room, locking the door behind me. But the words wouldn't leave my mind. "It wants Daniel." Why me? Why all those years ago? That night, the house was restless. Every wall groaned. Every window rattled, though there was no wind outside. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. When my uncle and aunt finally went to bed, I slipped from my room and crept through the dark hallway. The locked door upstairs seemed to whisper as I passed it, but I forced myself not to look, not to listen. I went straight for the back door and stepped into the night. The orchard stretched before me, black and endless. My breath smoked in the cold air, and the grass was wet beneath my shoes. I made my way to the tree where I'd seen the disturbed soil. Even in the moonlight, the patch was darker than the rest. I dropped to my knees and dug with my hands. The dirt was damp, clinging to my skin, but I kept clawing until my fingers hit something solid. Wood. A small box. I pulled it out, my heart pounding as I pried it open. Inside were scraps of paper, more drawings. Children's faces, dozens of them. Some smiling, some crying. But one stood out among the rest. My own face again. Only this time, the drawing was newer, fresher, as if it had been made only days ago. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the box. That's when I heard it, the crunch of footsteps in the grass behind me. Daniel, my uncle's voice called softly. Too softly. You shouldn't be out here. I turned. He was standing between the trees, his figure half shadow, half moonlight. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The orchard belongs to the house, he whispered. And now, so do you. I froze in the orchard, clutching the box of drawings against my chest. My uncle's figure didn't move closer, but the way he stood, rigid, watching, was worse than if he had run at me. I backed away slowly, then bolted toward the house before he could say another word. My hand shook as I slammed the door behind me and locked it. My aunt was nowhere to be seen, but I swore I could hear her humming faintly upstairs. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my room with the box beside me, staring at the crude portrait of myself. Every creak of the floor, every shift in the walls made my skin crawl. At some point, maybe close to dawn, I heard a sound from upstairs. A sharp click, the locked door. I crept out of my room, my bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The hallway was colder than usual, and when I reached the end, I saw the door was ajar. For the first time since I arrived, it was open. The air leaking from the room smelled damp, like soil and rot. I pushed the door slowly, and it creaked wide enough for me to step inside. The room was small, but every inch of its walls was covered in drawings. Hundreds of them. Children with blank eyes, children holding hands, children standing beside a crooked, black shape that I could not fully understand. In the center of the room sat a small wooden chair. On it rested a single drawing, carefully placed as though waiting for me. It was me again. Only this time, the drawing showed me standing inside the very room I was in. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but before I could move, the whisper came again, this time not from the paper, not from the walls, but from everywhere around me at once. Daniel, stay. Behind me, the door slammed shut. The door slammed with such force that the walls seemed to shudder. I spun around, clawing at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The air in the room grew thicker, heavy with a damp, earthy smell that filled my lungs like soil. The whispers began again. Not one voice this time, many. Children's voices, overlapping, circling me. Some laughed, some sobbed, but all of them said the same thing. Stay, stay, stay. The drawings on the walls seemed to ripple, as if the crayon figures were shifting when I wasn't looking. My vision blurred, and I staggered back, tripping over the small chair in the center of the room. When I hit the floor, my hand brushed something cold. It was a trapdoor. I hadn't noticed it before, hidden beneath the chair. With shaking fingers, I pulled it open. A wave of foul air rushed out, carrying the unmistakable stench of decay. Below was a narrow set of steps descending into darkness. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but something stronger pulled me down. Maybe it was the voices. Maybe it was the house itself. The staircase ended in a stone chamber lit faintly by a single lantern. And there against the far wall I saw them, tiny shapes, dozens of them. At first, I thought they were dolls. Then I realized they were bones. Children's bones, arranged in careful rows. Above them, carved into the stone, were words written in something dark and dried. The house chooses. I stumbled back, choking on the air. My hands shook violently as I raised the lantern higher. On the wall beside the writing, fresh carvings had been made. My name, over and over again. Daniel. The whispers swelled into screams. And then, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate, coming closer. The footsteps descended slowly, each one echoing through the chamber like the toll of a bell. I backed against the wall, the lantern shaking in my grip, shadows jerking wildly across the bones. My uncle's figure emerged from the darkness first, his face calm, his eyes fixed on me as though this was exactly where I was supposed to be. My aunt followed, her hands folded neatly, her smile as hollow as ever. You found it, my uncle said, his voice low but steady. Good. The house wanted you to. I shook my head, my breath coming in ragged gasps. What is this? What did you do? It isn't us, my aunt whispered, stepping closer. It's the house. We only serve. We only keep its rhythm. The whispers swirled around me, rising into a deafening chorus. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing faintly, as if the house itself had a heartbeat. I pressed myself harder against the stone, desperate for any escape, but there was none. My uncle pointed to the carvings of my name. "It called you long ago, Daniel. That's why you're here. That's why your mother sent you." She knew. The words hit me like a blow. My mother. She had known? She had sent me here on purpose? No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. But deep down, I remembered her expression when I left, strangely relieved, almost like she was finally free of something. The whispers grew louder, screaming now, demanding pulling. The lantern in my hand flickered violently, then went out. Darkness swallowed me whole. In that blackness, cold hands brushed against mine. Small hands, dozens of them. Children's voices filled my ears, chanting in unison. "Stay, stay, stay." I screamed, but the sound was devoured by the house. And in that moment, I understood the terrible truth. There was no way out. The house had chosen me, and it never let go of what it chose.